want to outline everything you need to know if you want to really understand Angular. Number one, you need to understand components and you need to understand services. Services are there to share the logic across components that include the state of the components or of the application. And then components are smaller building blocks that can be used to build pages or build parts of the page. By the end of this video, you'll understand how components works, how the services works, and how to share the state across multiple components using services. Okay, so I'm already in the folder where I want to create my project. I'll say new terminal. Then I'm going to say ng new for a new project. Okay, then followed by your project's name. Okay, so in this case, my project name is I'll just call it Angular 101. Okay, that's my project name. Then I hit enter. Then Angular will create the projects for me. Do you want to create a zone-based application? I will just hit enter to take the default, which is no for now, until Angular is stabilized in this feature. In terms of style, whether I want to use CSS or CSS, I can use my arrow keys to move around. My favorite is SCSS, but you can choose CSS if you want. So I will go with option 2. And then after that, I'll just hit enter. Now the application is creating. I'm gonna just give it a okay. So once the Angular is done, you should see that package is installed successfully, Git initialized successfully, so everything went well. Now you need to navigate inside of your application because this created Angular 101 folder. So let's just cd Angular 101. Once you're inside, I'll open this in Visual Studio Code. So I would write code, full stop, enter. So this will fire up Visual Studio Code. Okay. Now, let's have a look at the project structure. On your left, this is the projects created for you. .vs Code, not modules. You don't have to worry about these two folders. These are for managing your packages, and these are just settings for this project. Okay. Public, this is where your image goes. As you can see, Angular already created the icon for you there. You can replace it with your own image. Source, index, this is your entry point of your application. Okay, so if you want to change the title, you can change it here, like the best Angular app, and then you can add description. Then you can add all meta tags you need, right? So yeah, that's pretty much it. If you want to add some bootstrap, for example, you can add bootstrap here. And I think we should do that so that we don't have to spend time writing CSS, okay? But what is more important is this part. In the body, you have the app root. So this is the placeholder for Angular. This is where Angular will be putting your application because your application is dynamically rendered, okay? After that, we have the main file. So this is all for configurations. If your Angular couldn't bootstrap, you'll get some errors. This is the file that's included for you. You don't worry about it. This is where you put your global styles. Like you can put padding 0, margin 0, box size across, then HTML, body. You can just give it some default styles, okay? Then you can just give it some default files for the heading, for the text decoration. Let's see the header, text center, that's fine. Okay, then let's get some start for the button. and get some start for the button hover. This one we can just make it input and text area. This one we can just make it a button so that it's easier. Okay, let's also get some start for the navigation, so that's when we create our navigation can look nice. Let's make it flex, space between, and align item center. Okay, this is just for that when you create the elements they look good already. Okay. Yeah, I think this should be sufficient for now. So now all your application can respect the styles, but you can still put the styles in the component level. Okay, and then this is where you put all your packages. This is where you have all your scripts. This is basically if you want to run your application, you can just click debug and you can just click start. So this would basically run whatever command you want to run over here. Okay, you can also run this command manually like ng-save. This will open your application. This is that's your development server. Going back to the folder structure, the rest of the file you don't have to worry much about it. These are for configurations and stuff like that. We can work with this on the data stage. For now, defaults are sufficient. Then you have the app. You have config. So these are basically your configuration, and then you have app component. This is your entry point. So now the application, since it's running, it's gonna be running this component by default, the app component. Okay, so let's open this. Okay, I don't know why it's not opening. I'll just copy the link, fire up my Google Chrome, and paste it over there. Okay, you see the title, the best Angular app is the title that we actually changed in the index.html. All this content is coming from here. Okay, let's just remove this. I don't know what is this. Okay, I don't know what those errors were, but you can ignore them. They got nothing to do with us. So here we can just collapse all these things and just remove everything. If you hover over the routlet, you will see that this acts as a placeholder for dynamic fields based on the current router state. So again, we have two places. The main application would be rendered here, and it's saying app root. If you go back to the app component, you can see that this is app root. So that means the index page would be loading what? The app component over here. This is why you see it's by default. So if you were to go there and say, maybe let's create a nav over here, right? And then in the nav, we can have some links, okay? But let's put them inside of a div, okay? And then here we can have span dot logo, okay? So we're going to create a span and just call this Angular 101. This is our logo, okay? And then let's save this. And then now you can see that in your application now you have your logo there on top, okay? So obviously we have our styles. So we can just copy everything and put it inside the container and see if this would improve our look. Okay, so now it's much better. It's inside the container. It's a better padding. Okay, so let's also put this inside dot flexbox dot spaced. So this would create this would put it under a class called flexbox and then apply another class called spaced. Let's copy this and create those styles in this index, because again we want those to be common. So this is the container. Let's put it here. Let's just say flex. We want it to display flex with a gap, and let's just align items by default at the center. Then we want another one called spaced, right? So we can just say justify content space between. So if we apply these classes, we are expecting something like this. Okay, cool. In the navigation, I would like my link to be color white. Okay, that's what I would like to see in my navigation bar, and the whole thing I want it to be color white actually, because yeah. So we're using here in the app.html, we're using the class logo here. This one we can put it here because it's common, it's only relevant for this component. Okay, let's see. Perfect. Let's change this color to more of a whiter theme, and then here I will put everything inside of the square brackets like this, just for aesthetics of it. There we go. So you see now you have your Angular application, you have home, you have about, and you have contact. These are not acting as the links, they are not clickable. So what I need to do is I need to go to your app.cs and add here router link. Okay, because you are using a router link here in your links. In Angular we don't use href. Okay, I'll show you a difference just now. Okay, you see now they are pointing, and if you look there, they are showing that these are links. But if I click here, nothing happens because I have not created pages yet and told Angular that if the user navigates to contact, which component to load, if the user navigates to about, which component to load. So that will take us to the second part of this tutorial, Angular components, the building blocks of the Angular. Components act as pages and they act as the part of the page. So you can have a component that is a page, or a component that is just a section, or a component that is just an element. Okay, so now let's create the home page, the contact us and about. Let's format this properly. Let's just make this flex as well. You see now the advantage of creating the global styles. We can actually get to use them anywhere where we want to apply those particular styles. Okay, this is a better formatting. Okay, see now this is a flex box and it's looking nice with a gap and everything. Now what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and create the home. Remember we have a router outlet here, right? So before we do that, before we create home component, I want us to create a footer here. Okay, here's the footer, and then again the footer, I'll just add the styles of the footer right here. Okay, see where footer is. Here's our footer. We have navigation, we have the footer. So now you can see nicely how other components will just fit in here. So this is the place for what? For the content. Okay, This is the place for the content. Now, let me show you exactly how to do that. So, the best practice is to go to the app and create a new folder, call it components. And then you can right click the folder and open it in the terminal. Once you open it in the terminal, you can just say ng generate component, then you give it a component name. According to this, we have 3 components. So we have home, about, and contact us. So I'll just say home component. Hit enter. So now inside of the components, if I open there, a new folder will be created called home component. Okay, so let's create another one before I explain what's going on. Now I'll just change the name to about component. Hit enter. I can use the upper key to go change the name and say context component. Okay, so now we have 3 components created. So if you go there, we have about component. When you let's start with home. We have home component. When you create the component using Angular CLI, 3 things get created. Number 1, TypeScript file that contains your logic. If you look at this, you will see that it is exactly similar to the app component, which is this one. Okay, it has the component decorator, it has the selector, it has the imports. The imports are basically dependencies. Let's have over this. Yeah, it's a template dependency. Those could be directives, it could be other components, it could be pipes that can be used within these components. Standalone components can import each other standalone components, and pipes can be used within templates. So this is why we have this. So that means in the app component, we have a dependency to the router outlet. And why is that? Because if we go to your HTML, we are using the router outlet. This is coming from Angular core. So you need to import it so that you can be using it. Another dependency we have, let's put this next to each other. We have dependency to the router link because in the HTML we are using the router link. These are not normal stuff. These are Angular directives. href is a native attribute, so you don't need to import anything to use it. But this is not a standard for Angular. We're using router links, and I'll show you a difference just now. So let's just leave it here. So if we go back to the home component, you'll see again we have the component decorator, we have the selector. A selector, this is what we can use to use this component within other component. You will see that example soon. This means we don't have any dependencies yet. This tells you where is the HTML for this component and where is the CSS file for this component. They are within the same directory, so they are here. Here's the CSS, here is the HTML. We have the extra file called spec. You can remove it because this is for unit testing and we are not doing unit testing yet. Now that we have components, let's see what we have in the HTML. We have the placeholder that just say home works. Okay, so now if we want, we can replace this with .center, and then here we can have h1 that say welcome to Angular 101, and here we can say your journey to mastering Angular starts here. So this is the component of, this is the content of this component. Copy center, what's global styles, just right under the spaced. So just say here align item center and justify content center. Okay, simple like that. So now we can go to the home. First of all, we want this to be flex. Another thing, we want the flex direction to be a column because we want things to move from top to bottom. Okay, So, but if we go to our application, there is nothing yet. We are in the home page, but nothing is happening. So, why is that? It's because we haven't told Angular that if you're in the home page, which component to load. And in order to do that, we're going to be using app routes. Okay. So if I open app routes, I can add an object here and say, okay, Angular, if the path is empty, use this component. Use home component, then save. Now if you go back, the path is empty and we're using what? A home component, as you can see. So now let's add another style here on top of the container. I'm gonna call this section. Then the section is gonna have the padding of vertically 60 pixels, 20 pixels, no margin. Background color, let's just use something like blue, but a very light shade of blue like that. Okay, no border radius, no box shadow. This is just the separator. So here in the home component, I can put everything inside a section. Then let's cut all this content and put it here and then format our document. So that's much better. So now the home page is loaded. But if we go to About Us, nothing is happening. So now we can go ahead and tell Angular, copy this, add a comma, add another object, and add another object, format your document. Then here, I'm going to say if we're going to About, and then here if we're going to Contact, here load About component, and then here load Contact component. You can see that as I'm adding this component, Angular is automatically importing them in this file, because otherwise without the import this would complain. If this complains, you can just say, you can press Ctrl and period key, then you can see some quick fixes. The usual one is just to import it, then it would be added and it would be fixed. So now let's see. So now I can go to Contact Us, you see, About Us component works, and Contacts component works. So you can see now I can navigate between the pages. If I navigate between the Contact and About, you see the page is not refreshing. But if I go to Home, you see the page is refreshing. If I go there, no refresh, go back home, it's refreshing. What could be the issue? If we go back to the app, you can see that here we are using the href, which is defeating the Angular purpose, because now this makes Angular not behave as a standalone application or single page application. Rather, it's making it refresh just like a normal server-based application, which is not good for performance. So you need to use the router link. So now if I navigate to About, go back home, you see that the page is not refreshing, but Angular is just replacing the content with the page content. So this is why if we go to the application again and hover over outer outlet, this is the placeholder. You can see exactly now that when you navigate to the page, the content of that page just get put here in between the navigation and the footer. Okay, let's quickly write some content for About. So again, you can wrap everything under a section and then have something like this. Okay, and then under Contacts, again, you can wrap everything under a section and then have something like this, and have something like this, and then here let's put basic form, and then you can just enter dummy fields. Okay, right. Okay, and then let's add some styles for the form. So we're going to add some form styles, and then under the form, what we have is form group. So I'm going to go there and say form group. Let's give this some padding, background color, border radius, and then here we can style some labels and style some input and text area. Okay, now let's see what we have under contact us. So you can see now we do have our very dummy form. We can go to about us and we can go to home. So this completes the Angular routing. That means now we can navigate from one page to another. Okay, let's say in the navigation as well, we want to be able to greet a person. Before we do that, right now you can see that the navigation is exactly inside of the component and the footer is exactly direct here. The good practice is to create a separate component for this. So let's go again. On the component, I'm going to create another component called nav. So let's go there and let's call this component nav. And then now let's create another one called footer. Now this one will show you how to use a component inside a component. Okay. So now in the app component, you see now these two components, the nav and the footer, has been created, right? So now we can just take this component, cut this content and cut this content, okay? And go to our nav and paste the nav content and go to the footer and paste the footer content. Remember, we also have some styles there. So now we can cut the styles here. In the nav, we want the logo. So this is what we'll leave there. And then in the footer, we just want the footer styles, okay? So if we go to the application, you can see now we are in the home page, but we don't have a navigation and we don't have a footer. We want it to be global, right? So the reason why we're putting it here, if you put it, let's say you put it in the home component only. Let's say here, whatever you put here is going to be visible in the home component only. But if you put in the app, it's going to be visible in the app. So now to use the navigation, we need to go to the nav component, check the selector, copy the selector, go to your other component, open this, paste, and then close. Okay, it's going to give you some error, and then you can do the same thing with the footer, right? If you go to the footer, you can see that the selector for the footer is app footer. Okay, then now you need to import. So control period import, control period import. Then you can go to file and save all the files. So if you go back to the application, you see now our navigation is back. But now, instead of having all the code here, we are actually having a designated component and we're just using a component inside another component. What would happen if you were to copy this, go to the home component, just below your paragraph, put it there and save, and then click import, save all? What will happen? Guess. The navigation will show for every page, but it will also show for the home page. See? So you see these links are not working right now. That's because, remember in the app component, I said the reason why we have this router link, you see now, again, before I continue, let's remove this. We don't need it here anymore because we are no longer using the router link in this component. But now we're using the nav component and the footer component. You see as well, they're also imported from their direct respective classes. So I can press Control and go to the nav component. If I get there, I need to add router link here now because now it sees the navigation component that is actually using the router link. Okay. So now if I go back there, now you see these are back to working. I can go back home. You see now that Angular is actually rendering the nav globally and is also rendering within the component scope. So this is why we're putting it inside the app so that it can be global. Every component can access it. So we don't need this. We don't need this here. And then we can just undo this here. So those are Angular components for you. So now let's say I want to create a user. Okay. Let's say I want to say over there, or rather not creating a user. Let's say I just want a span here, and I just want to say you have 20 notifications. Then let's give this a class. I'm gonna give it notifications, and let's style it. Okay, let's add span.badge, and then here you can say 20. Okay, so we have 20 notifications there. Actually here you can just use the SVG for notifications. Okay, this is just the SVG part. In the page, let's just give it a fixed width and height. Width 18 pixel, height 18 pixel, and then the right we can give it minus 30 pixel. Okay. Font size, let's say it's 12 pixel. Let's make this 24 by 24. Okay, and then display flex, align item, justify content center. There we go. There we go. Now we can just push it further a little bit, maybe minus 24. I think that should be the right calculation. Okay, so now let's say we want to display number of notifications like this. Okay, this is in the navigation component, right? So first of all, we have it hard-coded as 20. So maybe this 20, we don't want it to be hard-coded, but we want it to be a number. So we need to declare that variable. So let's just say notifications, let's just say is equal to 20. Okay, then now if we want to use this 20 in the templates, we can just say notifications like that. Okay, so if we change this now to 28, we can see that the Angular is going to reflect 28 over there, right? Okay, now I want to show you the state management. Let's say in the home page we want to be able to update notifications, and we want this to reflect here. How can we do that? So let's go there. Let's again say notifications is 5, and then let's just set the method here, add notification. Then this will increase the notification, remove notification. This will decrease notifications. Okay, then we're gonna need 2 buttons here. We're gonna call this .flex .center. Then here we just need to have 2 buttons. This would be add notification, and this would remove notification. So you can have a button, and Angular gives you the power to add some event handlers. So when the user click this button, this action would happen. Okay, so now if I click here, something will happen. If I click here, something will happen, but you wouldn't see unless you had somewhere, maybe in the bracket, notifications. So remember, we have 5 notifications, and when we add, this is going up to, and then if we minus, this is happening. Okay, right? So it can go all the way down to 0, because we said if notifications are greater than 0, minus notifications. But these are not connected with the navigation one. So now, this is where we introduce a new concept of a Ngoda services. Okay, so we can also use a service to be able to share the logic and the state between components. So what we're going to do is we're going to go there, add a new folder, call it services, and then right click, opening integrated terminal, and then use Angular CLI ng generate service. We're going to call it notification service and hit enter. Now a service is created. You can again delete a spec file, then you are left with the service. Now this is not like a component. This is have the injectable, because you can inject this class inside another class to be able to use the logic. So now why don't we go to the home component, copy this logic, and now put it globally, because we want it to be shared across the components. So now we have the notifications equal to 5, so let's make it 18, right? And then now you can copy this and go to your Angular component and inject it. So you can have read only notification service is equal to inject function notification service. Then you can right click again and import. So now let's remove all this code, because we already have all this logic in the service. So now you can copy this service and go there and say this will come from notifications, dot notifications, and this, when it's being clicked, it's gonna call notification service dot add notifications. Let's see if this works. So you see, it's coming from the service, and we can add. So now that means we can also go to the navigation component and actually inject the service. Also, this is coming from Angular core. We need to import the function, and then now in the templates we can just say notification service dot notifications. So now you can see that they are pointing into the same place. So now you see, now the state is shared across the components. So now I can put this anywhere I want, and this would just actually work. So this is how the service works. You create a service, Angular will add the decorator, call it injectable, that's what makes it a service. Then it's a class name, then you can put your logic over here, and then this logic can be shared. If you want to use it in the home component, you just go inject that service. If you want to use it in the navigation component, you go inject the service. Then you should be able to actually have your state shared across components. Okay, if you want to do this thing in the about us component, for example, again, you can just go there and inject the service, add all missing imports, and then here can edit. See, can still use the notification service dot notification received. And now if we navigate to about us, we can see we have 18 notifications. Let's go to the home and change this down to 10 and go to about us. We can see that it's 10. It is still remembering the state. If you go there to the home and actually change it, you see this works. If you want to be able to also change it within the contacts page, for example, or rather let's do it in the about page, you can just do the same thing. You can copy this and put them wherever you want to. Maybe let's say below a paragraph, you still want to have the functionality to do that. Okay, this one, let's just say center row. It's fine, doesn't matter. So see, now we're in the about page, and then we can still change it in the about. We can go to the home page and still continue to where we left it off. So that is how the state works in Angular, and that is the power of the Angular services rather.